Hey everyone, my name is Taryn and thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Nicole Flower House. I grow cut flowers here in Zone 7B in North Carolina. I just want to do a little tour through the garden. We are predicted 33 degrees next week, so I'm unsure if it'll be a frost or not. It's possible, so let's take a look and see what we have before the frost comes, and if the frost doesn't come, then there will be more tours. Some of the Celosia in this bed is turning the most pretty coral color. It's looking so nice. Most of the Celosia at this point has gone to seed, so I am just cutting it and drying it at this point. That is something that I really need to get done before the first frost, if possible, is to finish cutting all of this Celosia. I've made a lot of progress on it, but there's still so many good stems that I can use for my drying. Now, if I happen to find stems that haven't gone to seed, I will use those in my fresh bouquets right now. I have a few spots that I'm going to find those, but most of it is already gone to seed. And popping out of this Celosia, I have some Dahlias. There are definitely Dahlias buried in this bed. I'm wondering if I get all these cut, if they'll continue to grow and pop through. There's one way down there. Celosia definitely took over this part of the garden. Now in the Dahlia garden, there are plenty of beautiful blooms. Look at this one. That one's so pretty. What I've been working on is getting as many of these Dahlias identified and tagged as possible. Like this one, for example. I've put a number on it and described the color as magenta, and then on my phone I've taken a picture of that tag in front of the bloom. So when I'm doing my reorganization and planning of the Dahlia garden for next year, I will know what all of these plants look like. This is also something that I really have to get done before the frost comes, because once these get hit by frost, I won't be able to identify any of these flowers because they will all be brown and look exactly the same, and none of these beautiful colors will be able to be distinguished. Have more cafe au laits down in here. This maroon lily looking one is so pretty. I love the dark purple stems it has. And the foliage is also a beautiful dark color as well. Now, because the Dahlia garden is so wild and crazy right now, it is hard for me to get tags on every single plant. I have a pretty big order for tomorrow. I have 4 bouquets for delivery, and then I'll also need to take some to my shop. So I will be harvesting as many Dahlias as I can. And I'm going to prune these plants back really hard. I'm hoping that we make it through this potential frost that's coming next week, because after I prune these back pretty hard, maybe they will bloom and I'll be able to see which plants I missed on the tagging. I love these little tiny palm varieties. They make really great accent flowers. Another thing I'm doing is looking at all the photos that I'm taking of these dahlias and comparing it to my order from last year and seeing if I can identify most of these varieties. My orders from last year aren't a complete documentation of what I have because the dahlias are several years old, but it is narrowing it down a little bit. If I happen to know the variety's name, I will put it on the screen. I don't know all of them, but some of them I do. This one right here was one of my big splurge tubers. It's called Gabby's Wish. Definitely one of my favorites. Under here is my winterberry plant, and I'm just trying to keep the birds from getting to my berries. I harvested some of these branches to see what they would look like dried, and they're okay. The berries definitely turned a maroon color after several weeks, so I'm hoping to leave these on the plant until I'm ready to use them so that they maintain their red color longer. These right here are Lysianthus that I transplanted from a different part of the garden, and they are very mad right now. I don't know if they'll survive or not if I cut them back, but that transplant did not go well. They were over here, and now I moved them over here, and they did not like that. They did not have blooms on them or anything when I transplanted them, but maybe I should have waited till it was colder. This right here looks like anemone foliage. I wonder if that's what that is or not. Intermixed in here, I have some zinnias. They were completely flopped over and facing the wrong direction. They have this spot disease on their foliage, but I was just curious to see if I fixed the way these branches were laying, if the blooms would start to grow upwards again. They're definitely facing upwards now instead of down toward the ground, but the stems aren't really growing upwards. Here's the back of that plant. It was completely laid over into this bed, so I just flopped it over. I'm just trying to clean up for fall. I'm taking as many fresh flowers as I can, but we're coming to the end of the season. Here's some Zowie zinnias. These plants right here, this is called Jewels of Opar. This is one of my absolute favorite fillers. It just adds such a sparkly texture in addition of a little bit of color without being heavy at all. It's really pretty. This is a second flush of stems as well. I've been cutting on these few little plants all season long. This dahlia right here is so pretty. I think this is Sweet Love. I'm not sure if it's Sweet Love or Sweet Natalie. I think it's a little, I think it's a little on the pink side to be Sweet Natalie, so I'm thinking it's Sweet Love. I think I have another one that I think is Sweet Love, or I'm sorry, that I think is Sweet Natalie. That one. Its coloring is more similar to a Cafe au lait dahlia, but much smaller, which these I love because it looks like the colors of the Cafe au lait, but with the smaller blooms, they're just so much easier to work with. There's another one of those over here. Very blush toned. That one's not quite open yet. That has some pink on the top though. Here's another one. And you can see it next to this. This Cafe au lait has a lot of bug damage, but you can see them next to each other. It's a little more pink, a little more blush than this Cafe au lait, but still a great combination. The center of this one is very similar to this color, and I like putting those two together. Here is the tunnel that had all the celosia in it. I've started harvesting all the celosia. Here is the aftermath, which I know all of this has gone to seed, so it is going straight to dry. Once this is all cleaned up and cleared out, this is where I want to plant my ranunculus. This soil is so dry and just needs so much help, so I am going to mulch this and do a lot of my bug hut treatments to it to try to get it looking a lot better. Now that the heat of summer is over, I'm seeing what has survived this mess of grass, and this straw flower plant is something that has survived and is giving me blooms, which I'll take. Anything that I can save to work on over the winter, as far as dried flowers, I'm really excited about. I really would like to come in here and weed this grass out. I think straw flower is hardy to zone 8 and we are zone 7, so I would love to try to see how long I can get this to survive for. Some of the plants are pretty diseased. Like this looks terrible, but now it's putting on some green, beautiful green new growth. So this is a spot I'm going to focus on soon to see what I can do for these plants. This celosia is quickly becoming one of my favorites. I think these varieties are the pompous plume varieties, and I definitely like these the best. They're the fluffiest, most romantic. I love the texture, and the colors just seem to change with the season. They're absolutely beautiful. So I'm thinking next year I'm going to focus more on pompous plume varieties than the other ones. I have some white gumfrina that have survived, which I'm happy about. I'll take that. Anything that's white will look good with a red ribbon for the holiday season, and they dry very well. Not an abundant amount of stems, but I will take anything at this point. I definitely thought my zinnias were too sick to put on any blooms, but they have put on a new flush since I cut them back. And they happen to be these nice bright colors for fall. This row here on the end has a white straw flower that's giving a few blooms. About every week I can take a few off of here. This right here is a Rudbeckia plant, so I'm wondering if I unbury this and give it some nutrition and mulch, if it'll produce any blooms. They are a cold tolerant and frost tolerant plant. I have completely finished unearthing my poor roses. Here is Strawberry Hill. Haven't seen her in a while. She's looking good though, despite everything. I have not been training these branches onto the trellis. Some of my Velcro strips kind of disintegrated in the sun. I'm not surprised. Our sun here is so intense. But some of these branches need to be attached to the trellis there. But she has new growth. I don't know if I'll get a flush of blooms before frost or not, but everything looks good. Some of these other roses have buds on them despite not having much foliage. But I'm hopeful that after resting over the winter in a nice hard prune, that they'll make a good recovery in the spring. It's very common for me to see this on the foliage in our climate, and I just prune it off and it seems to do okay. I've pruned all the blooms off of these plants, but this one has already produced another one. I was just trying to give them a fresh start, and this rose is just so amazing and productive. This is a hybrid tea rose, and I think it's called All My Love. Let's see. All My Loving. So definitely one of my favorites. It's a beautiful color, huge stems, not too many not too many thorns, and it just keeps producing new growth and new buds. This one, I can't remember if this is Desdemona or Wild Eve, but she produces hips. And I'm excited to see if these turn a more red color or if this is how they stay, but I'll be watching those. I don't know enough about roses to understand that whole process, if it's just certain varieties or all roses, but they have to be under certain conditions. Or how that all works. There's a lot of spider webs. I keep getting caught up in here, which is good. I don't want pests on my roses. I have really pruned back these elms. These roses were not getting enough sun, so I'd rather sacrifice those trees than my roses. We'll see how they do. I might even coppice them. I have a few that I cut that were blocking the entrance here to my arbor. So I'll see what happens to that. If it produces stems and looks nice, then I may coppice all of these for a little bit of a hedge effect. But I originally planted these for privacy, but they're just causing too much shade to my roses. So I'm not sure what the fate of these will be. But now that I have them all trimmed back, I'm really excited to get some cold hardy flowers planted in here in this area. It might be too late, but I'm still going to try. I'm going to put things like snapdragons, Rudbeckia, bachelor's buttons, Orlea. I'm going to try some scabiosa and strawflower and see how that goes. The plan for my fall bulbs, once I get all this cleaned up, is to have ranunculus and tulips in these beds here and anemones. So however many of these rows I need is what I will be doing for the bulbs. I am going to be removing the green landscape fabric, heavily mulching these areas, and attempting a new no-till method for tulips I will have more on that once I get further into the process, but I'm excited for that experiment. This dahlia right here I can't get enough of. So beautiful. This basil right here even feels like it's making a little bit of a comeback. I could probably clean some of these stems up and use them as foliage. And all of this down here, I think this is anemone growth. This is where I had anemones and I didn't pull them out, I just cut them off. So I'm wondering if those will come back for me. These right here are making an amazing comeback. These are Hypericum plugs that I bought from Farmer Bailey, and they literally sat on my deck in their poor little trays for the whole season. A lot of them were dried up and dead and looked like this, but the ones that were still alive I planted out and they are actually growing. I'm so happy about that. Another thing I have under here, these are sunflowers. I just planted some seeds in here to see what would happen. Technically, sunflowers can handle frost, but I don't think these are going to get enough daylight hours to do anything. But I just wanted to try that out. I have a decent amount of willow that I can harvest for my wreaths this year. Not as much as I was hoping and not as much as last year, so obviously I didn't weed and these don't get enough sun. I need to either move these or try something new. I did plant a ton of new ones that I had rooted from cuttings from these. Some of them did okay, but that hedge did not do that great. Here is what they look like. They're not dead, but they don't look good. So my plan is to take the green landscape fabric off of here. I don't think it let enough water through and it was just too hot in our climate. So even after mulching it, it didn't help. So I'm going to remove all of this green landscape fabric, mulch these, weed this, let them rest over the winter and see what happens. Okay, mulch of choice for this season is 16 yards of leaf mulch. This is more than just shredded leaves. It's been breaking down for a while. I purchased this. It's less expensive and weighs less than traditional mulch. So both of those things made me want to try this out. I'm really trying to find ways to make my flower farming more sustainable for me and also financially. Quite a few of the ranunculus that I had planted out here have sprouted, so that is really exciting. I wasn't sure the success rate I would have with these, and I'm happy with what I have here. So with the recent storms that were brought to us by Hurricane Ian, my eucalyptus trees were bending all the way to the ground to the point where I was worried that they were going to be uprooted. So I coppiced them just to kind of save them. I made a lot of dried bouquets and stuff with the eucalyptus, and I think these trees will be just fine. I wanted to coppice them eventually anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, but I was going to wait until they were a little bit older. Once they are a little bit older, I may coppice them again lower to the ground. That's so I can get more of the smaller offshoots and things that are easier to use in floristry instead of giant stems that are like really fat. Often my eucalyptus looks really bad like this over the winter, and in the spring sometimes it looks like this, and then a lot of it in the fall will look really good like new growth. So these plants are doing well. This one I don't show very much because it's in the very front yard, but it is doing amazing. I am probably going to make 1 or 2 really big eucalyptus wreaths to take to the shop with this. Here's another one. I mean, these branches are huge and they smell so good. I'm really happy with these. Look how pretty. These right here are foxglove. I was afraid to use them in arrangements because their flowers are poisonous, but they're still beautiful for our mulch bed right here. I pruned them back and took all the dead foliage off, and they have really gotten a second wind from that and look really nice and green and lush. It's kind of hard to see. I do have some Dara right here, but these plants are being utilized by caterpillars. Here's another one. So I'm not harvesting off of these anymore. I'm just letting them have these plants. I did throw some cilantro seeds down here in this bed. It looks like they have taken, and I'm hoping to have really early spring flowers off of this next season. These right here are the fronds from my asparagus, and honestly I've been using this as filler and it works really good. It lasts a long time and it's just really light and airy. I love any kind of filler that is light and airy. It just adds an extra element to your bouquets that is interesting, adds dimension and texture, but doesn't feel heavy. This tiny little Dara plant I have been harvesting off of because I haven't noticed any caterpillars on this one. And I even like using these before they're open. I think they're kind of pretty like that too in a bouquet. These are thornless raspberries. I have been using this foliage in bouquets as well. I tend to ignore things that I'm not used to using, so these plants could use a little love because I haven't harvested off of them until recently. But I've started doing it and I actually really like it. I have to get stems that I like that have like these smaller leaves. These are just really big, and I don't make bouquets big enough to justify foliage that big. But these fresh little baby sprouts down here, I love using this kind of size of foliage in my bouquets. These Lysianthus have not been transplanted and look okay. I'm still getting blooms here and there. Not very many, but I can't believe they're still going. What I do like is that they are putting on growth. I think they're in the rosetting stage, which is fine. Their season's over. I want to overwinter these for next year, so I'm excited to see this new growth down at the bottom, and I can probably just start pruning these back soon. I love white dahlias, but the bugs love them too, so finding blooms that aren't damaged is kind of hard. This one looks pretty good. That guy's gonna hide in there, but Finding the white ones that don't have a lot of damage is hard, especially when they're not staked up like they're supposed to be. But as usual, I always have hopes for next year. Look how pretty this is with the purple from the Robin Regal. And then in the background, I have these big magenta ones way back there. It's hard to convey it through the camera, but the colors that are going on right here are just so pretty. Well, that is all for today's garden tour and update. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. And the best way you can support me and my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower-loving friends. I'll see you next time. Bye.